all things that happen within the Sabbath. Just as the study I was reading with the priest, I'm pretty sure the Pharisees also thought it was unlawful for the priest to do work on Sunday, but that was in a totally different complex because the priests was the one that was supposed to be doing the work of God, spreading the message and doing the work of God. So everything was approved through the authority of the priest. And then at the same time with the disciple, with Jesus, they were hungry, and just because they would move the head of the grain to feast on it, the Pharisees saw it as it was a way of work, just by putting their hand on it, pulling it away, just like harvesting the grain. And so Jesus made his point, and the reading is said it was the first reading of conflict with Jesus and the Pharisees. Some people would take it in a definition conflict of a physical altercation, but it was far past that. It was only when Jesus spoke the words of what his father had stated for him to know, and Jesus is the Sabbath of all things. So by making their own decision on how Sabbath supposed to be, that was just a false teaching of what they brought up in their own minds and lives. And sometimes when you think about it, just not only when it pertains work, but I'm pretty sure many of you may hear when some people would consider Sabbath like a Saturday. Some may consider it as a Friday. And I think that's all based on what denomination in church is. So what anybody thought would be, as far as considered in Jesus' heart and mind, since he's the Sabbath, what would be considered the actual seventh day of Sabbath? Anybody? I have a few that consider the Sabbath day as far as the seventh day. Some consider it as a Friday, some consider it as a Saturday, and most denominations consider it as a Sunday. Some would say that it's in the Bible, but you can read it, but it just only say the 7 days. So what would be considered exactly as the main Sabbath day, where you're supposed to rest and devote your time in talking with God and doing the work of God? Yeah. And it's more of the respect of the resurrection or the life, a new life and chapter of Jesus Christ coming back. Okay. And so that's really something that needed to be touched up on, and I'm glad that I'm able to do this lesson today, at least to know actually how that standpoints work out. And Jesus cited an incident in David's life where David was running from Saul to save his life. David and those with him were hungry and ate bread in the tabernacle unlawfully because it was reserved for the priest's consumption. Jesus' point was that humans need should dictate exception to strict adherence to religious rules and the need to allow compassion and empathy to guide ministering to others. Jesus' second illustration, he pointed out that even the priests work on the Sabbath but are not held accountable for violating the Sabbath law because God commanded their duties and responsibility and they did not stop on the Sabbath. So I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, if there's any event that may happen on a Sunday and it's all about helping the community out, food pantries, farmers market, or clothes giveaway, or since school's starting back up, school supplies, would that be considered as a humanity of God's will because you try to help out those who are not fortunate enough to be able to get these materials and gallons of God? So, and so out of curiosity, with the study was, do anybody know if the Pharisee was going by like the old laws of the Sabbath? Because one thing about it, Jesus was the New Testament of life, which he was the one that overruled or out, or what would be the proper word? He switched over the old laws from the Old Testament to the New Testament. So everything from wherever the old Sabbath was, he recreated it. That at the same time, God and Jesus still had the real of saying, given authority to allow things that's under his word to be able to be a fault where it's nothing sinful, nothing that just everyday work without even having that time for God. So at the same time, with the principles of service to God, his people and humanity must be prioritized and balanced with the Sabbath purpose of honoring and glorifying him. I think that even just being at work, even doing physical labor, mental labor, or whatever, you still have to have your conversation with God and still meditate. You can multitask it, but put more of the task into God's word and then show grace to him. You know, I mean, as far as praising him, not grace. but praising him as often more than ever because, again, from the last stage that we have, everything must come first with God. We, right. You got to be equally. Yes. Will you? Mm-hmm. Right. Right. And as long as it is justly and right, and 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 so true because there's been times of the past when I was young, and Sundays would be around, and to me, I was looking at it in a different way because I remember when you used to work on Sundays, you would get paid more. I was looking at that in general. I wasn't looking at anything beyond that. But now that in life, when you get older, at least not get older, but when you start getting closer to God, you understand you just don't try to work out a job when it calls you to get paid more on those days that, just like what the pastor and Deacon Lewis said, that you got to balance it out. You can't balance it out about how much you can put in your bank account or in your pocket. You got to have that balance of doing it in the right manner, not to just, just have your own platform or just saying that, oh, well, I'm going to work on this Sunday and because there's going to be more income to it. And then all of a sudden, when they get to the point when they do away with that, and then all of a sudden they put me on Sunday, and then guess who didn't want to work on the Sunday? So, I mean, you can't have two sides of it and not devote most of your time and say, well, instead of just worrying about making more money, I should be devoting about making more time and making God deeper in my life. Because I know when that happened, there was always a shortcoming on my behalf because I wasn't putting God deeply in my life. And I mean, the same thing could happen exactly with the Pharisees, but Jesus overcame, broke down points, and told them exactly that he is the Sabbath. He know of all things. He held the power as well as his Father. Going to verse 6. I tell you that something greater than a temple is here. If you have known what these words mean, I desire mercy, not sacrifice. You will not have condemned the innocent, for the Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath. So he was telling the Pharisees all these things, saying whatever you say doesn't make a difference because I know all. I was told of. I was born to know the word of God. I know where I need to stand and where you need to stand. Jesus' disciples were not breaking God's purpose for the Sabbath, but the Pharisees misguided concept of it instead. Just as the priests were guiltless because they were obeying God, Jesus' disciples were equally as guilty because they were under his authority as the promised Messiah and could work on the Sabbath without condemnation for violating it. Jesus condemned the Pharisees for failing to grasp their spiritual responsibility to model the spirit of the Sabbath, which includes showing mercy to God's people instead of emphasizing religious rule, keeping that ascetic God requirement in the law. Have there been any time that any of y'all, the church members, let me rephrase that, have any of the church members ever been into that point, such as hearing one person say something that would really kind of stir you into the thoughts, like what the Pharisees end up try to convince the disciples or try to tempt Jesus to think otherwise of what is supposed to be right in the Sabbath? Have there been a point that you went beyond the point of knowing what is supposed to be done on the Sabbath, that you did totally different, way below the point of, you know, that you balanced it out, but something far from that, that you'll say, well, I just do this for this one time or whatever, and yes. And when you stated that when church members come to church, is it like not doing more work in the church to make it where you could be as guilty of being attendee of the church, but not really getting really deep involved in doing some type of work for the Lord? Oh, I guess I should be. uh, yes, I was asking you. Sorry, I should have addressed you. I was asking, well, you asked me in a statement where you were saying that any church member or just anybody in general who attend church, um, when they attend, they are guilty of not really committing service within the church or try to help also do their part in the church, or in what meaning would be considered guilty? Okay. Okay. Jesus' rebuttal of the Pharisees' accusations against his disciples for violating the Sabbath. Jesus declared that he, the Son of Man, is of the Lord. Wait, let me repeat. Jesus declared that he, the Son of Man, is Lord of the Sabbath. As the creator of all things, he is greater than and hold priority over the law, including the Sabbath. Sabbath purpose was to allow God people a day of physical rest and an opportunity to renew their relationship with him through worship and spiritual reflection. Pharisees made observing the Sabbath a burden and failed to realize an act of mercy on God's part to allow a day of needed rest for human and animals. Therefore, they should have promoted mercy and compassion instead of logistic adherence to the interpretation. And there was one part in here that I was reading, and I thought about something my dad said, and I'm going to go back over it. Pharisees made observing the Sabbath a burden and failed to realize and act on mercy on God's part to allow a day of needed rest for human and animals. And I just thought about one thing about what my dad told me. He said when he was a little boy, he was with some of his family members, and they was in the field. And he said that this one gentleman had this mule. Said he would try to get the mule to do more work. So when he would try to put the strap around the mule's mouth so he can help the mule to pull the plow, the mule was tired of work and grabbed the man by the arm and just chomped down on it. And said that they tried their best to pry the mule mouth open and had to use some type of plier or jack that pries the mule's mouth open. So to me, I just think that the mule was letting everybody know, I'm tired, it's time for me to rest, and also be just like the part of the Sabbath. There's so much that a person can do, even when you overwork, even when whoever you work for may try to add on, like they don't realize that you are tired. And conflict can arise because we all have in our heart that we can only do so much. And that when you get to that point, you can step back, have your meditations, have your conversation with God, and let God be the answer to all. Because I also learned that in life, that if you don't say no, it will be ongoing. There are so many people that can say, well, do you talk to God? Do you pray to God? Do you go to church? But how can you do such things if you hear me working on those days when I need to go to church? It may be easy for you to operate a business or whatever, and you have all the time in the world to allow yourself to go to church. But I feel that if you're a church-going person or a faith believer of God, and what it happened to God's begotten Son, that we should know that everything will overpower what can go in the mind of worldly things. And the saying is that things still go on once you are no longer here. And it may be true, but while you're here, you should factor yourself in balancing that out and help God to be your protector. Jesus wasn't put on the cross just for us to still carry our everyday life without acknowledging the will of what he has done and what his Father created for all of us. So we cannot fall in the patterns of misguided, misled things that, like what the Pharisees went through. We got to be strong and study our Bible. Keep God in our hearts and minds before you get up, or just when you're getting up, put your feet on the ground, have your conversation with God. Even when you're brushing your teeth, washing your face, shower, whatever, have God in your heart. Sit at the breakfast table, same thing with the family, fellowship with among the family. Drive to work or wherever you're going, still communicate with God. Once the car is put in park, you go inside the grocery store, to your job, any hospitals, you name it. Fellowship with God and pray for everybody in your surroundings. When that's completed, leave, start it back over until you safely at home. Do the same thing. I know as a father up, I know I may seem like, or I may be getting out of the lesson today, but I just feel that in ways that this all pertain to what I'm going to say is that sometimes we can see bad news all the time on the news, and we'll say, well, we don't want to keep watching bad news, where if you know in part of life, in the Bible it said there will be good times and bad times. And we cannot ignore the bad times, and always keep in mind the good times. That's how you also find yourself getting closer to God. You pray for everybody that you don't know. A prayer is not a singular deal. It's a gathering, a unity. Pray for those who may despise you. Always have conflict towards you. Prayers go for celebration and sorrow. Sabbath. Prayer is a part of the Sabbath. Fellowshipping with God. Make sure that you be in tune with the right ways of the word of the Bible. And I know that just doing the Sunday school lesson, it can be where you got to make sure you be correct on everything you teach. You just can't mislead or misguide it. And it's always a blessing where you can get some input so it can help you open up your eyes and realize that what my thoughts may be on it, I want to have it clarified. Because I just don't want to be a Sunday school teacher and just reading scriptures and say, okay, this is what it's saying. Then when I stand before church members and visitors, and then it's not what it's supposed to be. And I pray that anytime I ask a question, that I can be clear on it and have it where anybody can reply back on what I'm asking. And it's not a struggle, because one thing about it, as long as I pray to God to help me through all these things, I will mature in it and develop myself more into being a better Sunday school teacher. But at the same time, I know that if I stand before everyone, that God would be within me, to help me speak the word correctly. Because I don't want to be guilty of any teaching. So I would like to know if there's any final views or opinions on any of the lesson today. I definitely appreciate that outpour of thoughts, and it helped me develop more on listening to comments made in this lesson, and it helped quite a bit to develop it more of a better teaching. And God bless. Thanks for everybody for being here on this Sunday. It's a blessing for everybody to be here. And God bless everyone of my family here at Paradise.